The call for help. The Galactic Alliance chamber had never been so silent. Representatives from 17 different species sat around the massive crystalline table, their usual bickering replaced by a heavy, desperate quiet. Ambassador Krell of the Esbani clicked his mandibles nervously, scanning the faces, or what passed for faces, of his fellow diplomats. "The Wraith fleet has taken the Caladan system," he announced, his translator rendering his chittering speech into the common language. "That makes 12 systems in 3 cycles." The holographic display in the center of the table showed the swath of devastation cutting across Alliance space, a spreading darkness consuming everything in its path. No one spoke. What was there to say? The Wraith had appeared from the uncharted regions 6 months ago, and nothing had stopped them since. "The Monterey defense fleet was completely destroyed," continued Krell, his exoskeleton shifting to a pale blue of despair. "Their weapons, they somehow drain energy directly from our ships. Our shields, our propulsion systems, everything just fails." "What of the refugees?" asked Elora, the Vexian representative. Her crystalline form shimmered with anxiety. 17 million made it out before the planet fell," Krell replied. "The rest." He didn't need to finish. The silence that followed was broken by Drav, the ancient Thulian whose species had helped found the Alliance 3 centuries ago. "We've tried diplomacy. We've tried showing strength. We've tried hiding. Nothing works." His voice, usually so commanding, now sounded frail. "The Wraith consume everything they touch. They do not respond to communication. They do not take prisoners. They do not negotiate. Then we are finished," whispered Volner of the Grun, his thick tentacles drooping in resignation. "No," said Krell, rising to his full height. "There is one option we haven't tried." The chamber went completely still. They all knew what he was suggesting. They had discussed it in whispers, but never openly. "You cannot be serious." Elora's voice trembled. "They are unpredictable, dangerous." "The humans," Krell confirmed. "We need to contact Earth." Uproar erupted around the table. The humans were relative newcomers to the galactic stage. They had been discovered only 70 years ago, a curious species confined to a single system, but possessing technology far beyond what should have been possible for their development stage. Initial contact had been peaceful but cautious. Humans were different, intense, emotional, unpredictable. Most concerning to the Alliance was humanity's history. While most spacefaring species had overcome their violent tendencies thousands of years before achieving interstellar travel, humans had not. Their history was soaked in warfare. Their literature glorified conflict. Their greatest innovations came from their conflicts. The diplomatic reports were clear. Humans were just a few centuries removed from global wars that had nearly exterminated their own species. "We agreed to limited engagement only," reminded Volner. "Cultural exchange, regulated trade, nothing more." "That was before the Wraith," countered Krell. "We need what the humans can offer." "And what is that?" asked Drav. Krell's exoskeleton shifted to a deep red. "Determination. War. Humans understand war like no other species we've encountered. It's in their blood, their history, their very makeup. They think differently than us." "You're suggesting we invite warriors into our midst?" Elora sounded horrified. "Creatures who might be as dangerous as the Wraith themselves." "I've studied them," Krell insisted. "Yes, they have violence in their past, but also compassion, loyalty, self-sacrifice. They could be the allies we need. And if they decide to conquer us instead of helping us?" Volnar challenged. Krell looked at the spreading darkness on the map. "Then at least it will be a different end than the one the Wraith offer." 2 weeks later, Krell's ship emerged from hyperspace near the edge of human territory. The diplomatic vessel was unarmed, as were all the Alliance ships. Their species had all evolved beyond the need for weapons long ago. A decision that now seemed like terrible hubris. "Approaching Earth defense perimeter," announced the navigator. "They're hailing us." The view screen activated to reveal a human face, dark skin, close-cropped hair, sharp eyes that seemed to analyze everything in an instant. Alliance vessel. This is Admiral Helena Zhao of Earth Defense Command. State your business. Krell moved into view. Admiral Zhao, I am Ambassador Krell of the Galactic Alliance. I come seeking an urgent audience with your leadership regarding a matter of grave importance to both our peoples. The human's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted. Ambassador, we haven't had Alliance visitors in over a decade. Your last diplomatic mission made it quite clear that closer relations were unwelcome. Circumstances have changed, Admiral. Drastically. 2 hours later, Krell stood before the Earth Security Council, 12 humans representing different regions of their homeworld. He had completed his presentation, shown them the footage of Wraith ships draining the energy from Alliance vessels, shared the casualty reports, displayed the maps of fallen systems. Let me understand this clearly, Ambassador, said Counselor Okafor, leaning forward. You want us to commit our military forces to your war. The same military that your alliance has repeatedly expressed concerns about. Yes, Krell answered simply. Why should we? Asked Counselor Chen. Your alliance has kept us at arm's length for decades, limited our expansion, restricted our trade, treated us like barbarians barely out of our caves. Krell's translator struggled to convey the complex emotion in his response. Because despite our differences, I believe humans understand something fundamental that my people have forgotten, the value of fighting for survival. And because if the Wraith consume the Alliance, they will eventually come for Earth too. Admiral Zhao, who had been silent until now, spoke up. These Wraith ships, they've never faced human weapon systems. No, our species evolved differently. Our technology is based on principles that are compatible with theirs. That's why they can drain our systems so easily. Your technology developed along a completely different path. The humans exchanged looks that Krell couldn't interpret. His species communicated emotion through exoskeleton color changes, not facial expressions. We'll need time to discuss this, said Counselor Okafor. Please wait outside, Ambassador. When Krell was called back 3 hours later, the atmosphere in the room had changed subtly. We're sympathetic to your situation, Ambassador, said Okafor. But we need more information before committing our forces to an interstellar conflict. We'll send a small delegation to assess the threat. It wasn't everything Krell had hoped for, but it was a start. The human assessment team arrived at Alliance headquarters 1 week later. A mix of military officers, scientists, and diplomats led by Admiral Zhao herself. Krell watched them with fascination as they reviewed Alliance data, examined Wraith technology recovered from battlefields, and interviewed survivors. They were different from any species he had encountered, intensely focused one moment, making surprising intuitive leaps the next. They worked longer hours than any Alliance species, consuming stimulants they called coffee and energy drinks to extend their productivity, and they asked questions no one in the Alliance had considered. Why haven't you tried using automated drones against them? Asked a human scientist. Autonomous weapons are forbidden by Alliance code, explained Krell. The ethical implications. But they're not autonomous if they're remotely piloted, countered the human. You could keep your people safely away while still fighting. Such thinking was alien to Krell's people. The Alliance fought with crews willing to sacrifice themselves if necessary. The idea of fighting without risk seemed wrong somehow. On the third day, everything changed. A human outpost on the edge of Alliance space, a small scientific station studying spatial anomalies, went dark. Admiral Zhao received the news during a briefing. The Vega station is not responding to communications, reported a human officer. Last transmission indicated unknown vessels approaching. Alliance sensors confirmed the worst. Wraith ships had detected the human presence and attacked. There were no survivors. Krell had never seen transformation happen so quickly. The humans, who had been professional but reserved, suddenly moved with cold, coordinated purpose. Admiral Zhao's face became like stone as she received the report of the station's destruction. 47 civilian scientists, she said quietly, conducting peaceful research. Within hours, the assessment team had packed up their equipment and prepared to depart. Krell approached Admiral Zhao as she was boarding her shuttle. "What happens now?" he asked. She looked at him with eyes that had hardened into something ancient and terrible. "Now, Ambassador Krell, you're going to see what humans do when provoked. Your alliance asked for our help. You're about to get it, and perhaps regret it." 3 days later, Earth officially declared war on the Wraith. The response stunned the alliance. Humans didn't just mobilize their standing military. Their entire society shifted. Civilian shipyards were converted to military production. Retired veterans returned to service. The economy reorganized around the war effort with astonishing speed. "Don't you understand?" Krell tried to explain to the Alliance Council. "Humans don't fight wars like we do. For them, it's not just about soldiers and ships. It's total commitment. Their entire civilization focuses on the objective." The Council watched in fascination and horror as human fleets began to assemble at the edge of Alliance space. Ships unlike anything the Alliance had built. Angular, bristling with weapons, designed for one purpose only. This was humanity unleashed, the warrior species that had spent thousands of years fighting itself, now turning its full attention to an external threat. "Perhaps," whispered Elora, "we have awakened something worse than the Wraith." 1 month after the declaration of war, the first human strike force engaged a Wraith fleet in the Proxima system. The Alliance provided observation vessels, expecting to document another brave but doomed effort. What they witnessed changed everything. The human ships didn't behave like any Alliance vessels. They operated in perfect coordination while appearing chaotic. They used the gravity of planets to slingshot into unexpected attack vectors. Most importantly, when the Wraith deploy their energy-draining weapons, the human ships seemed barely affected. "Our technology is different enough that their draining fields only impact us at about 30% efficiency," explained a human commander afterward. "And we've already developed countermeasures to reduce that further." The Wraith fleet was decimated. For the first time since they appeared, the enemy was in retreat. As the smoke cleared from the battlefield, Ambassador Krell felt both relief and deep unease. The Alliance had begged for help, and humanity had answered. But as he watched the human fighters methodically hunting down the last fleeing Wraith vessels, he wondered exactly what force they had unleashed upon the galaxy. The humans had arrived, and war had come with them. The Reckoning. Supreme Overseer Xat of the Wraith Collective stared at the battle recordings for the 7th time. His pale, almost translucent skin rippled with distress signals that no one in the command chamber dared acknowledge. The footage showed human warships tearing through a Wraith battle group, impervious to tactics that had decimated the Alliance fleets. "How?" he finally hissed, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "How do they resist the void touch?" Science Director Mal approached cautiously. "Their technology evolved differently, Overseer. While Alliance species developed along quantum pathways, humans pursued cruder but more diverse energy systems. Our void touch cannot fully disrupt their power sources. Then we will adapt," Kat declared. "Double the harvesters on the captured worlds. We need more energy to strengthen the void touch." "There is another concern." Mal hesitated. "The humans fight differently. The Alliance species followed predictable patterns based on their ethical codes. Humans do not." Xat's skin flashed darkly. "Explain." "They use deception, misdirection. They leave wounded ships as bait. They hide weapons in civilian vessels. They attack our logistics rather than our warships." Mal's voice lowered. "And they do not stop when defeated. They retreat, adapt, and return stronger." For the first time since the Wraith had emerged from their home dimension to harvest this galaxy's energy, Kat felt something akin to concern. "Find their weakness," he commanded. "Every species has one." At Alliance headquarters, Ambassador Krell watched the strategic displays with a mixture of hope and trepidation. In just 2 months, human forces had reclaimed 3 systems from the Wraith. Alliance refugees were returning to their homes, protected by human defense platforms. The seemingly unstoppable advance of the Wraith had not only been halted but reversed. Yet Krell couldn't shake his unease. The humans fought in ways that disturbed many in the Alliance, not just their tactics, but their intensity. They showed no hesitation in targeting Wraith supply lines, cutting off their retreat paths, and destroying their harvesters. The concepts of acceptable casualties and collateral damage entered Alliance vocabulary for the first time. "They're effective, I'll grant you that," said Ambassador Volnar, his tentacles waving agitatedly. "But have you seen their new weapons? The radiation bombs that poison entire sectors. The autonomous hunter-killer drones. Where does it end, Krell?" "It ends when the Wraith are defeated," Krell replied, though privately he shared Volnar's concerns. The doors to the observation deck slid open, and Admiral Zhao entered. Though Krell had spent months working with humans now, he still found their physical expressions difficult to read. Zhao's face seemed perpetually set in what humans called a poker face, revealing nothing. "Ambassador," she nodded curtly, "your presence is requested at the strategic briefing." As they walked through the corridors of the station, Krell noticed something different about the human, a new intensity, even for her species. "You've discovered something," he ventured. Zhao glanced at him, then nodded once. "We've located the primary Wraith staging area, a system they call Nexus Point in their communications. It appears to be their main gateway to this galaxy." Krell's exoskeleton paled. "You're planning a direct assault?" "Not exactly." For the first time, Zhao's expression changed, showing what Krell had learned to recognize as grim determination. "We're developing something new. Project Sunbreaker." The briefing room contained the highest levels of both human and Alliance leadership. Holographic displays showed a star system with unusual spatial distortions surrounding it. The Nexus Point. General Martinez, Earth's top military commander, stood to address the gathering. "For 6 months, we've been fighting a defensive war, pushing the Wraith back system by system. It's been effective but slow. Project Sunbreaker offers us a chance to end this war decisively." He gestured, and the hologram changed to show a massive device unlike anything Krell had seen before. The Wraith depend on energy. They harvest it from planets, stars, even the spatial fabric itself. Sunbreaker turns that against them. It's essentially a quantum resonance cascade device. In simpler terms, added Dr. Winters, the project's lead scientist, it creates a feedback loop in their energy absorption systems. When they try to drain energy, it overloads their entire network. The Alliance representatives murmured among themselves. This sounded like the perfect solution, a weapon that would disable rather than destroy. "What's the deployment plan?" asked Elora of the Vexians. Martinez and Zhao exchanged glances. "The device must be placed at the center of their Nexus Point," said Martinez, "which means a direct assault on their most heavily defended position. The casualties would be..." Krell began. "Acceptable," finished Zhao, "given the alternative." The discussion continued for hours as Alliance representatives raised concerns about the attack plan, the untested nature of the weapon, and the potential for escalation. Throughout it all, the humans remained unmoved, calmly addressing each concern while making it clear that they would proceed with or without Alliance approval. As the meeting concluded, Krell approached Admiral Zhao privately. "There's something you're not telling us about Sunbreaker, isn't there?" Zhao studied him for a long moment. "Walk with me, Ambassador." They moved to a secluded observation deck overlooking the shipyards where human vessels were being repaired and refitted. The organized chaos of human warfare spread out before them. Supply ships moving alongside battle cruisers, engineers in spacesuits swarming over damaged hulls, new weapons being installed. "Sunbreaker doesn't just disrupt their energy systems," Joe finally said. "It collapses the quantum tunnels they use to travel between dimensions. It will seal them in our galaxy, cut off from their home dimension forever." Krell's exoskeleton shifted to an alarmed yellow. But without access to their home dimension, they'll be stranded here, isolated, vulnerable. Zhao's voice was matter-of-fact. And then we hunt them down. All of them. That's genocide, whispered Krell. That's survival, corrected Zhao. They attacked us. They destroyed our outpost. They've shown no interest in communication or coexistence, but to condemn an entire species. They would do the same to us without hesitation. Zhao turned to face him fully. Ambassador, your alliance called us because you needed warriors. This is what warriors do. We eliminate threats permanently. Krell felt a deep chill. The alliance had indeed called upon humanity for its warrior nature, but they hadn't fully understood what that meant. And what happens after? When the Wraith are gone? Then we go home, Zhao said simply. Back to our system, our own concerns. Just like that, you unleash your full military might, and then just withdraw. Something like surprise flickered across Zhao's face. What did you think we would do? Conquer the alliance next. Ambassador, we're soldiers, not conquerors. We fight when threatened. We protect our people and our allies. But war isn't our preferred state. It's just one we're good at when necessary. Before Krell could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. They rushed back to the command center to find chaos erupting. Tactical displays showed a massive Wraith fleet had emerged from hyperspace directly above the human colony world of New Eden. How did they get past our early warning systems? Demanded Martinez. Unknown, sir, replied a communications officer. But they're broadcasting on all frequencies. The main screen activated to show a Wraith for the first time. A tall, almost ethereal being with skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Multiple eyes blinked asynchronously across its face. Humans, it spoke, the translation software struggling with the unusual vocal patterns. You have interfered with the harvest. This cannot be permitted. Martinez stepped forward. This is General Martinez of Earth Defense Forces. Your attacks on our outposts and alliance worlds constitute acts of war. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The Wraith seemed to ripple with what might have been amusement. We do not negotiate with food sources. Your defiance is noted. Your punishment begins now. The screen split to show the surface of New Eden, a thriving colony of 3 million humans. As they watched, strange energy patterns began forming in the atmosphere. The sky darkened as if a massive shadow had fallen across the planet. They're using a planetary void touch, gasped one of the science officers. They're going to drain the entire biosphere. Martinez's face hardened. Launch all available ships. Protocol Omega is now in effect. The next hours were a blur of activity. The human fleet mobilized with stunning speed, but it was clear they wouldn't reach New Eden in time. Alliance representatives watched in horror as the Wraith began their harvest, the energy being literally sucked from the planet's core, atmosphere, and all living things. This is why we developed Sunbreaker, Zhao told Krell as they watched the feeds. This is why half measures won't work. How many on New Eden? Krell asked quietly. 3 million colonists, Zhao replied, her voice tight with controlled fury. Families, children, scientists, farmers, people who never raised a weapon against anyone. 2 days later, New Eden was a dead world, its atmosphere thin, its oceans partially vaporized, its surface scored of life. The Wraith fleet had withdrawn before human forces could engage, leaving behind only devastation and a message. Surrender or watch all human worlds suffer the same fate. Earth's response was immediate and unified. Project Sunbreaker was accelerated, additional ships were commissioned, and all diplomatic options were officially abandoned. The human war machine, already formidable, became something else entirely, an engine of retribution. Ambassador Krell found himself increasingly isolated among Alliance leadership. Many now viewed the humans with as much fear as the Wraith, concerned that one nightmare was being replaced with another. But Krell had spent enough time with humans to see what others missed: the pain behind their determination, the reluctance beneath their resolve. "We're deploying Sunbreaker in 3 days," Admiral Zhao informed him during one of their now regular meetings. "I wanted you to know first." "The Alliance Council is still debating whether to support the mission," Krell replied. Zhao's expression didn't change. "We appreciate their concern, but this isn't a democracy. New Eden changed everything. What can my people do to help?" For the first time in weeks, Zhao's face softened slightly. "Keep your medical ships ready. There will be casualties." The battle for Nexus Point began exactly as the humans had predicted: bloody, chaotic, and devastating. The Wraith had concentrated their forces to protect their dimensional gateway, creating the largest fleet ever recorded in the galaxy's history. Against this, the humans launched every ship they could muster. From the Alliance observation vessel, Krell watched the human armada advance. Thousands of ships moving in complex formations that seemed to ripple and adapt continuously. At their center was the Sunbreaker carrier, protected by layers of defensive vessels. "They cannot possibly succeed," whispered Elora. "The Wraith outnumber them 3-1. "Numbers aren't everything in war," Krell replied, repeating what he had learned from the humans. The battle unfolded unlike anything the Alliance had ever witnessed. Human ships fought with a coordination that seemed impossible, utilizing tactics that the Wraith clearly hadn't encountered before. They used the gravity wells of nearby planets to accelerate beyond normal combat speeds. They deployed decoys and electronic countermeasures that confused Wraith sensors. Most surprisingly, they sacrificed smaller vessels unhesitatingly to create openings for their main strike force. 3 hours into the battle, the human fleet had carved a corridor through the Wraith defenses, creating a direct path to the Nexus Point. The Sunbreaker carrier accelerated forward, absorbing devastating hits as it pushed toward its target. "They're not going to make it," Elora said, her crystalline form dimming in distress as the carrier took another direct hit. But the humans had anticipated this. As the carrier began to break apart, escape pods launched in all directions, a standard evacuation protocol. The Wraith ignored these to concentrate fire on the larger ships still fighting. What the Wraith didn't realize was that one of those pods contained not survivors, but the Sunbreaker device itself, along with a small team led personally by Admiral Zhao. Using the chaos of the larger battle as cover, the pod slipped through the final defenses and approached the dimensional gateway. "Sunbreaker deployment in 30 seconds, reported a human communications officer on the command channel. Krell watched as the tiny pod positioned itself at the exact center of the swirling energy vortex that connected this galaxy to the Wraith home dimension. The Wraith, finally realizing the threat, frantically redirected their forces, but too late. The Sunbreaker activated. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the energy patterns of the Nexus Point began to change. The swirling vortex constricted, its colors shifting from deep purple to angry red. Energy discharges lashed out in all directions. "It's working," breathed Elora. The Wraith ships nearest the portal began to behave erratically, some attempting to flee, others moving toward the collapsing gateway, as if trying to return home before it closed forever. The dimensional tunnel pulsed once, twice, and then imploded with a silent flash that momentarily outshone the nearby star. Where the gateway had been, there was now only empty space, and trapped on this side, cut off from their home dimension forever, was the entire Wraith invasion force. What followed was not the massacre Krell had feared. Instead, the human fleet surrounded the now disorganized Wraith ships and broadcast a message on all frequencies. "Attention Wraith vessels. Your gateway is closed. You are cut off from your home dimension. You have 2 options. Surrender and accept relocation to an uninhabited system under quarantine, or continue fighting and face complete destruction. You have 1 hour to decide." To everyone's surprise, the Wraith surrendered. Without their dimensional gateway and the energy it provided, their technology was crippled. Later analysis would reveal that the Wraith were essentially energy parasites, dependent on harvesting power from other dimensions because their own had been depleted centuries ago. 1 month after the Battle of Nexus Point, Ambassador Krell stood in the rebuilt Alliance Council chamber. The mood was complex, victory tempered by the cost, relief shadowed by new concerns about humanity's role in the galaxy. "They saved us," Krell addressed the council, "just as we asked them to. And true to their word, they're already beginning to withdraw their military forces." "But at what cost?" asked Volner. "The humans have changed the galaxy forever. The knowledge of their weapons, their tactics, it cannot be unknown." "Perhaps that is not entirely bad," suggested Krell. "For too long, the Alliance has relied on diplomacy alone. We forgot that sometimes survival requires strength." "And what of the humans themselves?" inquired Drav. "Do we continue our policy of limited engagement, or do we embrace them as full Alliance members?" Krell's exoskeleton shifted to a thoughtful blue. "I believe we need to understand them better. They are warriors, yes, but that is not all they are. They create art of stunning beauty. They debate philosophy with passion. They love their children fiercely." The council chamber doors opened, and Admiral Zhao entered. She looked tired but satisfied, the weight of command still visible in her bearing. "Admiral." Krell greeted her warmly. The council was just discussing humanity's role in the future of the Alliance. Zhao smiled slightly, a genuine expression, not the cold determination of wartime. "Our ships are returning home, Ambassador, as promised." "All of them?" asked Volner, surprise evident in his voice. "We keep our word," Zhao replied simply. "We'll maintain a small presence for scientific and cultural exchange, but our battle fleets are withdrawing. Earth has no interest in becoming an empire." Later, as Krell walked with Zhao through the gardens of the Alliance capital, he finally asked the question that had troubled him since the end of the war. "Your people fought with such intensity, such totality. Yet now you withdraw so easily. How is that possible?" Zhao looked up at the stars becoming visible as the sun set. "That's humanity, Ambassador. We build and we destroy. We create art and weapons. We love deeply and fight fiercely." "A dangerous ally," Krell observed. "But a loyal one," Zhao replied. "Remember that." As night fell, Krell reflected on the changed galaxy. The Alliance had begged for help, and humanity had answered with total war. They had saved the Alliance, but forced it to confront uncomfortable truths about survival in a dangerous universe. The humans were returning to their home system, but their impact would remain forever. Perhaps, Krell thought, that was exactly what the Alliance had needed all along, not just to be saved from the Wraith, but to be awakened from complacency. To be reminded that peace was precious precisely because it wasn't guaranteed. The Alliance had called for aid, and humanity had answered with devastation. But they had also answered with loyalty, courage, and ultimately, wisdom. The galaxy would never be the same, and perhaps that was for the best.